Welcome to Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffield. Thanks for being with us. Sam Stem is alongside. Sam's with WBGC. Welcome, Sam.
Glad to be here.
And Jim Schrader from the Telegraph is here as well. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, guys.
Jim, 3 children in the region have died recently after being shot in their homes from guns that they found in the homes that were loaded. Should the parents be held responsible in some way for these kinds of incidents? Should there be criminal charges against the parents?
Well, I suppose I'm getting this question first because I've talked about it so many times on this show, being a gun owner. I have a son who is now 19 and raised 2 stepdaughters. And always had guns in the house, but they were always locked up and unloaded. Matter of fact, I store ammunition away from the gun safe, locked up somewhere else. Now, the diehards would say that I would have trouble defending myself if someone broke into my house, but I didn't say how close in proximity to where I sleep those 2 sources are, and they can be accessed pretty quickly. But my gun safe, my son still at the age of 19 does not know how to open my gun safe. When I was married, my wife knew how, and I knew how. The guns, one of which belongs to my son, could never be taken out, could never be shown to friends. He could never show friends when they were over that he had a gun and that his dad had guns, because prying eyes will go looking for things like that. And you've really got to be careful about it. Here's my concern about punishing the parents for a child that accesses a gun. Sometimes they're just injured, sometimes they are killed. How do you punish a parent that through their own lax attitude left a gun where it was accessible to a child and the child killed themselves or killed a sibling? How do you punish a parent like that? What does it accomplish to put them in jail? What does it accomplish to fine them? How can you punish a parent that has lost a child due to their own stupidity? And we all know you can't fix stupid, but I don't know what it accomplishes to further put that parent through a trial or incarcerate them. I don't know how you punish them any further. What we would hope to do, and I'm an NRA member, what even in the most diehard NRA members talk about keeping your guns locked up, keeping them away from children, keeping them where visitors can't access them, so that people can't easily obtain a gun and hurt themselves or hurt another family member. It seems to me that the people that want to punish these parents the most are the ones that are anti-gun ownership, and they think, well, if you take away that person's right to own a gun, or if you incarcerate them, that will teach them a lesson and they'll get rid of their guns and they'll never have any more. To me, the loss of a child or the loss of a family member would be punishment enough to teach a lesson that will never be forgotten.
Sam, should the parents be held responsible in some way if a child dies because there was a gun in the home?
Well, you know, one of the prime responsibilities of being a parent is to ensure the safety of your child. And so on the face of it, your question is, well, yes, the parent should be held responsible. You know, it is their responsibility to make sure that the child is being raised in a safe environment. However, I have to agree with Jim 100%. There is no punishment that you could mete out that would be more awful than what they're already living through. You know, you're not going to teach them a lesson because they've already learned the lesson in the most harsh way possible. Now, let's back it up a little bit. Let's say for whatever reason the authorities become aware that, you know, somebody's got guns in the house and they're not secured, and that the children are playing with them. Neighbor calls authority. Well, then, yes, sir, go right on in and slap the biggest fine or you know, whatever. Take the children out of the home. Take them to foster care until these parents come to their senses and secure the guns. But as long as we have a Second Amendment and people have the right to have firearms in their home with the proper registration and so on and so forth, then you just have to rely upon the common sense of the parents to make sure that the guns are secured in a manner, as Jim described, that the children are not going to be able to do any harm to themselves. But, you know, it's a saying that's gone around again and again, you can't fix stupid. You know, and parents who are concerned about the welfare of their children don't feed them fast food every day for 3 meals a day. But some parents do. And, you know, I don't know that you're ever going to fix that. And there are some folks out there that just aren't smart enough. Now, that's not also true in every case either. Sometimes in these tragic circumstances, it's just a big mistake. Somebody thought they had secured the gun and instead it was left out. Or they thought, you know, it wasn't loaded and it turned out that it was. And there was no gross negligence, so that would even compound it. Number one, they're suffering from the fact that through their own negligence, their child died in this horrible manner, and then, you know, simply because they didn't double check, and now you're going to come in and punish them on top of that. That, to me, that just doesn't work. So, you know, as unfortunate as these situations are, I don't think there's anything the authorities can do to the parent. And, you know, you can't fix it after the fact. Once the tragedy has happened, it's happened. You can't fix it.
We need to take a quick break. We'll have more Metro Talk in a moment.
Hi, I'm Audrey LaCasey, and I'm from Alton, Illinois. I love music, and that's why I came to Lewis & Clark. It's been an amazing experience here at Lewis & Clark, working with students that are so talented, coming from all over the area, and they work so hard to follow their dreams. The music faculty at Lewis & Clark they're fantastic, and they're there every step of the way to push you to follow your dreams. One of the unique opportunities that I have had at Lewis & Clark is being able to record my own music with a fellow student here. Being able to record our music has opened doors for us in the music industry. My long-term goal is to finish here at Lewis & Clark and then to transfer to a 4-year school and finish my degree in music performance. I would recommend Lewis & Clark to another student because it is definitely a great place to get started and it can open so many doors for you.
Big dreams and good grades aren't enough to get into college. There are actual steps you need to take. Finding someone who can help is the first and most important. For the next steps, go to knowhowtogo.org.
This is Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffield. Jim Schrader and Sam Stammer here. Sam, the Illinois State Board of Education has announced it's going to investigate the East St. Louis School District. They've got a former U.S. attorney taking part in that investigation. Bottom line is the operation of the East St. Louis School District has been questioned for many years. Are the results of this finding going to have any impact on that operation?
That operation has been questioned for decades. It's been investigated before. And what's really disconcerting is if you study the figures, the amount of money that is spent per student in the East St. Louis district is many multiples of what is spent in many other districts that have much better results. And so that alone would cause you to say, well, somebody needs to look into this and figure out what's going on. You know, why are they spending 4 and 5 and 6 times as much per student and getting much lower results than surrounding districts? So the real question then becomes, okay, they go in and they find out what the problems are. How are they going to fix them? Can the State Board of Education run the school district? I mean, they've tried that in the past. So, you know, your question is, will the findings mean anything? Well, what the findings will do is just confirm what everybody knows, and that is, or what everybody suspects, let me put it that way, and that is that the district is poorly run. And like almost everything else in East St. Louis, they'll probably find corruption. And then, you know, somebody will have to come up with a plan to try to fix it, which will probably mean state oversight for some period of time. But sooner or later, you've got to turn it back over. And, you know, is there a lot of hope that it's going to get a whole lot better? Not in my mind. And I'll tell you what, I think everybody suspects what the problems are, but I don't think anybody has an answer.
Jim, is it going to make any difference that the Illinois State Board is sending a former U.S. attorney in to investigate the East St. Louis School District? There have been investigations in the past, as Sam has said.
So we can issue a 5,000-page document that says the East St. Louis school system is poorly run, that the vast majority of employees are overpaid compared to like-sized school districts anywhere else, that most of the employees are related to someone that's in charge of hiring people. And this is not something that's fabricated. This is something that has been studied over and over, that people are related to other people. I mean, they found, you know, people that had big, long, fancy titles that almost sounded manufactured titles, making, you know, $50,000, $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. Nobody particularly knew what they did, but they were related to the school board president, or they were related to the superintendent, or they were related to somebody, and nobody knew what these people did. Unless the state is willing to take it over and just say, okay, out with all of you, and we're going to run this as a state school, I don't know how you're going to fix it. Because as long as you have a local school board that is elected, and that school board chooses who is hired and who is fired, I don't think the state can go in and say, well, you, the citizens of East St. Louis, don't have the right to elect your school board officials, or do they, if they take control of the schools? You're not going to fix the problem. You're going to get a huge document saying, tisk, 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 we've got all of these problems in East St. Louis, just like they had similar to when we were in high school lots of years ago, guys. We heard stories of that then. Per capita spending is, as Sam says, 4, 5, 6 times what like-sized school districts spend. It has one of the highest dropout rates in the nation. Can't apparently educate their students, can't spend enough on new buildings and grounds and programs, and we have all kinds of family members on the highest paid legal jobs in East St. Louis. I don't know how you're going to fix it. But I also don't know that the state has the wherewithal to go in and actually run the school district like it should. So maybe if the voters keep putting the same people back in there and keep allowing this to go on and not revolting, then maybe the voters deserve what they're voting for.
And what has been happening for decades in East St. Louis is the poster child for a voucher system. If you could just empower the parents and guardians of these students to, take their education vouchers and go where they think the best situation exists, then the kind of school district you have in East St. Louis is, will cease to exist because nobody will want to send their kids there. Now, that's a hot button politically, but nonetheless, that would be one way to fix it. And just simply say, we're spending $8,000 per child. Here, parent, here's a voucher for $8,000. Spend it wherever you think your child can get the best education, in a neighboring district, in a private school, whatever. And pretty soon, East St. Louis School District will either cease to exist or it will clean its act up.
We need to take a break. We'll have more Metro Talk in a moment.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program in WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year mass comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album called A Brief History of Love. The single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arts-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
You're watching Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffield. Jim Schrader's here along with Sam Stem. Jim, the head of the Illinois Gaming Board, says there's no way that he can monitor gambling machines, slot machines, if they're put in restaurants and bars. He said that could be a problem. He says that right now regulators are in the casinos to keep track of this kind of thing. Are we going to have a problem if we have slot machines in bars and restaurants?
Well, duh. We editorialized on this when this bill was passed, and basically said, we don't understand. We have a very strict gaming commission in this state. Some say more strict than the Nevada Gaming Commission, that oversees slot machines, oversees parimutuel betting at racetracks, oversees all of the operations of the casinos. And they do it fairly well, but it's limited manpower because you only have a certain number of casinos and you only have a certain number of racetracks. Why not expand, allow either the number of casinos to expand or allow tracks, horse tracks, to put in slot machines, because they already have gaming individuals there. The Gaming Commission already oversees that. It's much easier to do than it would be for every bar, and we'll start alphabetically and go from Alhambra to Alton, every bar and every gas station to have slot machines that nobody could possibly oversee, that nobody could get in and make sure that the machines are paying out correctly, or that they're calibrated correctly, or that the state is getting the money due to them. Can you imagine, just in the city of Alton, how many people it would take if every bar and every gas station in the city of Alton had a corner with a couple of 3 slot machines in it that somebody would have to check in a pure world on a weekly basis, but at best on a monthly basis, and multiply that by the whole state. It's just manpower that, number one, the Gaming Commission doesn't have, and number two, it was just a mind-boggling job. So I continue to say that putting gambling machines in these little bars and gas stations and restaurants doesn't make sense. So I asked, as I said on this show last week, we interviewed Senator Cullerton, the president of the Senate, and I said, what were people thinking, or what was the Senate and House thinking when they thought this was a good idea to put vending machines or gambling machines in all these little bars and clubs? And he said, well, I guess we looked at it that we know a lot of these bars and clubs have gaming machines that they're paying on anyway, so we thought it would just be easier to allow it. And I said, well, if that's your mindset, why don't you legalize marijuana? Because you know it's going on anyway, you can't really stop it, and we'll just allow it. He didn't have an answer. Well, there is no answer. Why not expand legal gambling in the casinos, put slots into Fairmount Park and any of the other horse tracks that there are around? You've got gaming people there anyway. That makes a whole lot more sense to me than starting at State Street at the base of Broadway and start working your way up the bluffs from there and making sure that all of the gambling machines are paying off appropriately, and all of those bar owners paid $2,500 per seat to have a gambling machine in there. To make our viewers a little more sick at their stomachs, the capital bill that just went through the legislature is already spending the money that these gaming machines are supposed to raise. The bill has been a law for 2 years, and they haven't issued the first permit yet, but we're already spending the money through the capital bill that just passed.
Sam, the head of the Illinois Gaming Board, says slot machines at restaurants and bars are going to be a problem because he can't adequately enforce those machines. We're going to have an issue here, or is there enough oversight?
I differ with Jim on this issue. This is the 21st century. And I think a simple solution would be to say, if you're a bar or a restaurant and you want to put slot machines in your bar or restaurant, that you need to have internet access. Those machines can then be tied to some central location, some monitoring point set up by the Gaming Commission, which would be much less expensive than inspectors. And
lottery ticket sales.
Exactly.
And
they can monitor that.
I don't disagree with that, but that's not what the bill says.
Well, no, I understand that, but I mean, if the only concern is oversight, there is a very simple solution. Perhaps the legislature should have talked to the gaming board before they passed the legislation. At that point in time, the gaming board could have said, well, we don't have the resources to send the inspectors out to keep this up on the up and up, but here's a simple solution. And on top of that, it would be up to the owners of the bars and clubs to have the burden of the cost of buying machines that were capable of being hooked to the internet for this monitoring. So it's not a real tough fix. It's just that, as with many things in a bureaucracy like the state government, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and the legislature is going to always solve a problem by passing a bill without studying on down the line what all the repercussions are. And again, I think this whole thing could have been solved fairly easily in the construct of the original bill. But now it's a problem.
So that we stay on record that Sam and I always agree on this show. If they will amend the legislation to change it to where everything is internet based, then I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. I would agree with that, but that's not the way the bill that passed. The bill that passed was the Gaming Commission was supposed to stop in at all of these places on a weekly basis and make sure the bar owner was paying off correctly.
But
can't be done.
You know, and Kent touched on it. You know, there are thousands and thousands of lottery outlets all throughout the state. There's not an inspector going in and checking the ticket sales against the cash receipts. It's all done online. It's all automated, and you could do the same thing with the slot machines.
Except I will argue with one point on that. The instant scratch-offs, they do have lottery agents that have to go in and inspect those and make sure that they were sold in sequence, that they do have as much money for the rolls that they started out with. So there is some oversight there. But yeah, the actual gaming machines themselves, other than dropping off additional rolls of receipt material, there's really not much to it.
Jim, the federal government says Illinois cannot ask some Medicaid questions. It can't ask Medicaid recipients to prove where they live or how much they earn. And both of those questions were part of the Medicaid reforms that were approved by the legislature. Should the state be allowed to ask those questions?
Well, this is the same state legislature that doesn't think it's prudent when Sam files for workers' compensation claiming that he was hurt on the job. He doesn't have to prove that he didn't wrench his back playing golf that morning. This is the same legislature that says, no, you can't make somebody prove that they really got hurt on the job before they soak the state and soak the employer for 60% of their income for staying at home and all of their medical bills paid. This doesn't surprise me at all. Of course, it's also the same legislature that considered telling everybody in the world who owns guns. We try to be overly transparent on some things, and other things we're supposed to protect the privacy. It would seem to me if we have individuals that are on some type of social assistance, that they ought to be able to prove that they fit all of the criteria before they start collecting the checks. But as long as you don't ask the right questions, I don't have to lie to you. And I can cash my check.
In this case, however, it's the federal government telling the state of Illinois you can't ask these questions, and yet Illinois has the burden of supplying the benefit. So, if I'm the state of Illinois and I'm providing Medicaid to somebody, I want to be able to ensure that they actually live in the state of Illinois and they're not crossing the state line to get the benefit. I also want to be able to verify that they actually need the benefit. We don't need Jim Schrader walking in and applying for Medicaid and not having to prove that he can afford to pay for his own health insurance. So this is one of those mandates from the federal government that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Time for another battle over states' rights.
Gentlemen, that's going to do it. Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, has been here, along with Sam Stem, the president and general manager of WBGC. I'm Kent Sheffield. We'll see you next week.